My name is Emily Harrington, and I'm 29 years old. By the time my parents dragged me into a courtroom and tried to turn my kidney into evidence, I already knew something most people don't figure out until much later in life. Some families don't love you, they use you. They call it duty, or sacrifice, or doing the right thing, but what they really mean is, be convenient for us or stop calling this home. Everyone who watched the news later thought the story started there, in that wood-paneled courtroom under fluorescent lights, with microphones in my face and my sister lying in a hospital bed across town. But that's not where it started. It started long before kidneys and legal documents. It started with a girl who grew up as the backup daughter to a golden one. Sabrina Harrington, my older sister by 3 years, was the sun in our house. Everything revolved around her. Straight A's at Riverside High, student body president, homecoming queen, full scholarship to Yale. If there was a box that screamed perfect daughter, Sabrina ticked it in black ink and underlined it twice. And then there was me. I wasn't a disaster. I was just average. B student. Member of exactly one club, the Art Society, which met twice a month in a classroom that always smelled faintly of glue and dusty chalk. I liked drawing logos in the margins of my notebooks and designing fake coffee shop menus for fun. But in the Harrington household, average didn't exist. There was extraordinary, and there was disappointment. Sabrina was extraordinary. I was everything else. Emily, why can't you be more like your sister? Became the background music of my childhood. My father, Robert Harrington, said it so often that at 14 I started counting. I kept tallies in the back of my journal, tiny lines like prison bars. By 16 I'd reached 347. I remember the day I finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt. It was junior year. Chemistry had been absolutely brutal for me. The periodic table was a foreign language, and moles sounded like something you needed a dermatologist for. I studied for 3 straight nights. No TV, no drawing, just problem sets and red-rimmed eyes. When I got a B+ on the exam, it felt like I'd climbed Everest in flip-flops. Mom, I got a B+ on my chemistry exam, I said, stepping into the living room and holding out the paper like it was some kind of offering. Patricia Harrington, my mother, barely glanced up from her glossy magazine. Better Homes and Gardens, of course. Her world was always more interested in centerpieces and paint swatches than the actual people eating at the table. That's nice, sweetheart, she murmured, eyes already drifting back to an article about seasonal decor. From the kitchen, Dad's voice boomed, warm and animated, in a way it rarely was around me. Sabrina got her acceptance letter from Yale today. Early decision. Mom's whole face transformed. She practically levitated off the couch. Oh my God, Robert, we need to celebrate properly. Let's take her to Giovanni's. You know, that new Italian restaurant downtown everyone's talking about. I stood there holding my test, the black B+ starting to blur. I actually worked really hard on this, I tried again, stepping closer. Chemistry is my worst subject, and I thought maybe we could... Emily, honey, we're a bit preoccupied right now, Mom cut in, already reaching for her phone to make reservations. We need to plan Sabrina's celebration dinner. Maybe we can talk about your test another time. Yeah, sure, I mumbled. Another time in Harrington language always meant never. Later that night, I sat on my bed and drew a tiny table in my notebook. Sabrina's Yale celebration versus Emily's B+ in chemistry. Under Sabrina's column, Giovanni's, new dress, family photos, dessert. Under mine, silent dinner, reheated leftovers, test still in backpack. I didn't cry. I just drew another tally mark. 348. The only person who ever seemed genuinely outraged on my behalf was Taylor, my best friend since 4th grade. The first day we met, she'd shared her lunch with me after I forgot mine for the 3rd time in a week. I hadn't really forgotten. I just hated sitting at our kitchen table, listening to my parents discuss Sabrina's future like a business plan. Your parents are seriously messed up, Taylor said one Friday night in high school, as we lay on the floor of her finished basement, sharing a bowl of popcorn and watching some terrible reality show. It's like you're invisible unless they need something from you, and even then, they act like you should be grateful. I shrugged, eyes on the TV, even though I wasn't really watching. I've gotten used to it, I guess. 2 more years and I'll be off at some college far away. Maybe Oregon, maybe Washington State, somewhere they can't just drop by unannounced. That doesn't make any of this okay, Em. Taylor reached for the remote and turned the volume down. Have you ever actually told them how you feel? Like really told them? Once, I admitted. The memory still stung, even years later. I was 14. I told Dad I felt like they loved Sabrina more than me, that I felt invisible. What did he say? She asked, even though her face already knew it was going to be bad. He told me I was being overdramatic and jealous, I said flatly, that instead of competing with Sabrina, I should support her. Mom just sat there nodding like one of those dashboard dolls. Taylor winced. Emily. They made me feel like I was the problem for even noticing, I added, a bitter laugh catching in my throat. So I stopped bringing it up. Easier to pretend I didn't care. What I didn't know then was that their favoritism wasn't just a feeling I had to swallow. It was the foundation for something much darker, something that would one day make headlines. Years passed. I graduated. I moved out. I put physical distance between myself and the Harrington house. Not far enough to cause a scene, but far enough that they couldn't drop by without warning. At 29, I was living in a modest one-bedroom in Riverside's historic district. Cracked crown molding, creaky floors, a kitchen that could generously be described as cozy. I worked as a freelance graphic designer, designing logos and branding for local businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I had my own tiny rituals: morning coffee in the chipped blue mug I'd found at a thrift store, evening walks past lampposts that always flickered twice before turning on, late-night work sessions with lo-fi playlists humming in the background. I had boundaries. Holidays only, occasional phone calls, no surprise visits. It was better that way, safer. Then came the phone call that cracked everything open. It was a Tuesday evening. I was hunched over my desk, tweaking the curve of a coffee cup icon for a local cafe's new logo. My laptop hummed. The city outside my window was a blur of headlights and distant sirens. My phone lit up on the corner of my desk. Mom. My stomach tightened. She never called just to chat. Every time her name flashed on my screen, it meant something was wrong, or she wanted something. I stared at the screen for 2 rings, 3, 4. For a second, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then that old reflex kicked in, the one that still wanted to be the good daughter, even if she was the backup. I answered. Hi, Mom. Emily, she said. Her voice sounded different, thicker, frayed at the edges. It's your mother. Your sister's in the hospital. My heart dropped. What? What happened? Is she okay? There was a pause, filled with the faint beeping of hospital machines on her end. Her kidneys are failing, Mom said. The doctors say she needs a transplant. We're all getting tested to see if we're matches. You need to get tested too. For a moment, all the old bitterness, the B+ ignored, the 348 tally marks, the years of invisibility, fell away under a cold wave of fear. Sabrina was still my sister. We'd shared a childhood, even if mine had been the shadow behind her spotlight. What do you mean failing? I pressed, my voice shaking. Is she dying? They're saying she needs a transplant, Mom repeated, tears now audible. The sooner the better. Please, Emily, we're going tomorrow morning. The hospital will fit you in. You have to come. I closed my eyes, the room spinning just slightly. My whole life, they'd treated me like a spare part, a backup plan. Now they finally wanted a very specific part. Despite everything, despite the neglect, the favoritism, the 1,000 tiny cuts, I heard myself say, okay, I'll come. I'll get tested. Because that's what you do when your sister's life is on the line, right? You show up, you help. You don't keep score. I had no idea then that my decision to walk into that hospital would lead to subpoenas, camera crews, and my parents standing on the opposite side of a courtroom, calling me selfish. Or that saying no to them would be the first time in my life I truly said yes to myself. But that part comes later. That part starts with a manila folder and the words, Emily, you're the only match. The next week, I sat in a small exam room at Riverside Memorial Hospital, staring at a muted TV mounted in the corner. The screen showed some daytime talk show host hugging a crying guest, but the sound was off, and it felt like watching a stranger's life through glass. The room smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. My hands wouldn't stop fidgeting in my lap. I kept thinking, maybe it won't be me. Maybe someone else will be a better match. Maybe this will all turn out to be a false alarm. The door opened with a soft click. Emily? Dr. Stevens stepped in, a slim man in his 50s with tired eyes and a neatly pressed white coat. He carried a manila folder like it weighed 100 pounds. Hi, I managed. That's me. He sat across from me, flipping the folder open. His face was carefully neutral, the way doctors' faces get when they're about to drop something heavy and don't want you to see it coming. I've got your compatibility results, he said. Thank you again for coming in so quickly. No problem, I said automatically. even though nothing about this felt like no problem. He glanced down at the paperwork. Emily, you're a match for your sister. In fact, you're the only compatible donor in your immediate family. The words hung in the air for a moment, unreal. I'd expected it. I'd known, somehow, in the same way I always knew, which way my parents' choices would tilt. Of course it would be me. Of course. Still, when he said, only compatible donor, something in my chest went very still. Right, I said, my voice sounding far away. Okay, what exactly does that mean? It means, Dr. Stevens said gently, that if a living donor transplant were to happen within the family, it would be you. You're a strong match. I swallowed. And if I decide not to donate, then Sabrina will remain on the transplant list, he said. We'll treat her with dialysis and other supportive measures. Many patients live on dialysis for years while waiting for a deceased donor match. It's not easy, but it is absolutely possible. He said it calmly, clinically. My parents had made it sound like if you don't do this, she dies next Tuesday. Do I have to decide now? I asked. His brows lifted slightly. No, absolutely not. This is a major decision with significant implications for your long-term health. My job is to provide medical information and support, not pressure you. Regardless of what your family says, and they can be under a lot of stress right now, it is your body and your choice. Something loosened in my chest at those words. Your body and your choice. I couldn't remember the last time any adult in my family had said those two words together like they were allowed. I'd like to talk to my own doctor too, I said, to understand the risks. Is that okay? That's not just okay, he said. It's wise. I can forward your lab results to your primary physician if you'd like. We handled the paperwork. I walked out of the hospital with the manila folder pressed to my chest like a shield, sunlight too bright on the concrete. For about 40 minutes, I let myself exist in a strange, suspended state. I stopped at a bakery on the way home, ordered a coffee I barely tasted, stared at people scrolling on their phones like their lives were still normal. Then my phone rang. Dad. I stared at the name flashing on the screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button. We hadn't spoken one-on-one in over 4 months. Our relationship these days was mostly composed of stiff holiday greetings and the occasional forwarded article about Sabrina's accomplishments. My heart was already pounding when I picked up. Hello? Emily, my father said. No hello, no how are you. Straight to business, like always. Dr. Stevens called. When can you schedule the surgery? Just like that. Not how are you taking the news. Not. Are you scared? Not. Do you have questions? Hi, Dad. I'm fine. Thanks for asking, I said, the sarcasm slipping out before I could stop it. I haven't actually decided anything yet. I just got the results. There was a pause on the other end so complete, I pulled the phone away to make sure the call hadn't dropped. What do you mean you haven't decided? He said finally, his voice hardening. This isn't a haircut, Emily. This is your sister's life we're talking about. I'm aware of that, I said, my fingers tightening around the paper coffee cup. I'm saying this is major surgery with lifelong implications. I need time to think, to talk to my doctor, to understand the risks. There's nothing to think about, he snapped. You're doing this. End of discussion. The old me, the one who used to shrink when he raised his voice, would have backed down there, apologized, promised anything to avoid being the problem. But something inside me had shifted in that exam room when Dr. Stevens said your body and your choice. Dad, you don't get to order me to do this, I said quietly. This is my body, my kidney. What kind of person hesitates to save their own sister, he shot back, his voice rising. After everything we've done for you, everything we've given you. I actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. What exactly have you done for me? I asked. Name one time, just one single time, where you put me first, where you chose me over Sabrina, where you acted like my life mattered as much as hers. Another pause. I could practically hear the anger radiating down the line. This isn't about you, Emily, he said finally, voice cold. This is about Sabrina. She is dying. You are being selfish. It's always about Sabrina, I said softly. He hung up. The call ended with a dead, flat tone that hummed in my ear long after the screen went dark. By the next morning, I woke up to 19 missed calls and 20-something text messages, all variations on a theme. We need to talk about the surgery. When are you calling Dr. Stevens? Don't be dramatic. Your sister is suffering. You're her only hope. If you loved her, you'd do this. I put the phone face down on the counter and made coffee with shaking hands. A notification popped up anyway, glowing through the black screen. New message from Mom. Emily, I know you're scared, honey, but God chose you for this. Don't turn your back on His plan. I set the mug down a little too hard. Coffee sloshed over the rim onto my wrist, hot enough to sting. My whole body felt like that, scalded, overwhelmed, trying not to spill over. I grabbed my phone again and did the only thing I knew how to do when the Harrington pressure cooker started to whistle. I called Taylor. She picked up on the second ring. "You okay?" she asked without preamble. "No," I said, and my voice cracked on the single syllable. "Talk to me." I sank onto the couch, staring at the chaos of messages on my screen. "They're making me feel like a monster," I whispered. "Dad called and just expected I'd say yes, like it was a chore he was assigning me. And when I said I needed time, he acted like I was already killing her." "That's not surprising," Taylor said, her voice sharpened with protective anger. "That's how they've treated you your whole life. You're not a person. You're a resource." "I feel like I'm losing my mind," I said, "because part of me thinks they're right. What if I am selfish? What if saying no really does make me a horrible sister?" "Emily, no," she said firmly. "Listen to me. This is a massive medical decision. Surgery, organ donation. You have every legal and ethical right to take your time. That doesn't make you selfish, it makes you sane." "They're practically disowning me if I don't agree," I said. "Mom said God put me in this family for this exact purpose, like I'm a spare part." "That's emotional blackmail," Taylor said. "Classic. They're not giving you a choice. They're trying to corner you." "Have they even mentioned dialysis? Other options?" I hesitated. "No," I admitted. "All they talk about is me, my kidney, the transplant, like it's this or immediate death." "Then they're not giving you the full picture," Taylor said. "Promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you'll talk to Sabrina's doctor yourself," she said. "Or your own doctor. Get real information from someone who doesn't share your last name. Don't let them be your only source." I stared at the manila folder on my coffee table, my name typed neatly beside Sabrina's. "I met Dr. Stevens yesterday," I said slowly. "He didn't sound nearly as apocalyptic as my parents do. He said dialysis is viable, that people can live on it for years." "There you go," Taylor said. "Already sounds different from do this now or she dies." "Emily, your parents aren't doctors. They're scared and manipulative and very invested in Sabrina staying the center of the universe." I leaned back, closing my eyes. Somewhere in my apartment, my laptop pinged with a new email. Probably a client. Probably something normal, from a normal world where kidneys weren't currency. "I'm going to make an appointment with my own doctor," I said finally. "Get a full rundown of what donation would do to my body. Best case, worst case, all of it." "Good," Taylor said. "You deserve facts, not threats." A soft buzzing interrupted us, a second incoming call. I glanced at the screen. "Austin." Seeing his name made something inside me unclench just a little. My boyfriend, with his terrible horror movie jokes and habit of sending me photos of stray cats he found on his walk home. The one person, aside from Taylor, who never made me feel like a consolation prize. "I have to go," I told her. "Austin's calling. I'll text you after I set up the appointment." "Okay," she said. "And Emily, whatever you decide, I've got you. But make sure it's your decision, not theirs." "Yeah," I whispered. "I'll try." I switched over to answer Austin's call, already rehearsing the words in my head. "I'm a match. They want my kidney. I don't know what to do." At that moment, I still thought the hardest part would be choosing between my own safety and my sister's life. I had no idea yet that my parents weren't asking for a choice. They were preparing for a verdict. And they were willing to put me on trial to get it. The waiting room at Dr. Martinez's clinic smelled faintly of lavender-scented disinfectant, as if someone had tried to hide the sharpness of sterilizer under something gentler. It didn't quite work. I sat across from a wall lined with framed diplomas, twisting the strap of my bag between my fingers. I'd barely slept the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face. Cold, furious, certain. The face of a man who believed his daughter owed him a vital organ simply because he said so. When Dr. Helen Martinez stepped into the room, she greeted me with a warm smile that actually reached her eyes. "Emily, come on in." Her office felt different from Dr. Stevens, less clinical, more human. A lamp cast a soft glow on her desk, and a tiny succulent perched beside her keyboard like a silent, cheerful assistant. I sat down and took a breath that came out shakier than I intended. "So," she said gently, folding her hands, "I read Dr. Stevens' notes. You're a match for your sister." "Yes," I said, "the only one." She paused, studying my face. "And your family is pressuring you?" I let out a broken laugh. That's one word for it. What word would you use? Demanding, I said. Manipulating. Threatening to disown me if I don't schedule surgery immediately. Dr. Martinez's expression flickered with something sharp. Disapproval, maybe even anger on my behalf. Emily, I want to make something absolutely clear before we go any further. She leaned forward slightly. Nobody, not your family, not a hospital, not a judge, can force you to donate an organ. Ever. This is your choice. My eyes burned. I looked down, blinking fast. I'm scared, I admitted. Not just of the surgery, of disappointing them, of looking like the villain. Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. Let's take this one step at a time. I'll walk you through what donation actually means, medically and long term. And afterward, you'll decide for yourself what you want, not what your parents want, not what the public might think. You. She turned her computer screen toward me and began outlining the risks. Immediate surgical risks, she said. Infection, bleeding, complications from anesthesia. Recovery, she continued. 6 to 8 weeks minimum. Limited mobility. Depending on your job, you could lose income if you don't have paid leave. And then, she said, voice softening, the long-term considerations. I swallowed. Like what? Well, she said gently, you'll only have one kidney for the rest of your life. If anything happens to that kidney, you'll be in immediate medical crisis. You would jump to the top of the transplant list, but there's never a guarantee a donor will be available. My stomach dropped. I didn't know it was that serious. That's why you're here, she said. To know the truth, to make an informed decision. She clicked to another chart. As for Sabrina, she said carefully, has your family mentioned dialysis? They made it sound like she'd die without my kidney, I whispered. Dr. Martinez shook her head slowly. That isn't accurate. Dialysis is not ideal, but it is absolutely viable. Many patients live for years, decades even, on dialysis while waiting for a deceased donor. My head spun. They didn't tell me that. I'm not surprised, she said quietly. Families often panic and search for the fastest possible solution, but your health matters too. By the time the appointment ended, I felt both heavier and clearer, like the weight hadn't disappeared, but at least I finally understood what I was holding. I thanked her and stepped out into the cool afternoon air. And the first thing I did was call someone I knew would actually listen. Austin! He picked up on the second ring. Hey, Em, you okay? The sound of his voice cracked something open in me, a space that had been clenched tight for days. Can you come over? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. On my way. 10 minutes later, he stood in my doorway, slightly out of breath from hurrying, hair tousled like he'd run his hands through it a dozen times. I didn't realize I was crying until he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. What happened? He murmured against my hair. I told him everything, my parents' demands, the guilt trips, the doctor's warnings. He listened without interrupting, his hands warm on my back, grounding me. When I finished, he didn't say, just do it, or it's family, or you'll regret saying no. He said the one thing no one in my family ever had. Emily, your body is not a bargaining chip. It's yours. Only yours. A sob caught in my throat. He cupped my face gently. If you choose to help Sabrina, I'll support you. And if you choose not to, I'll support you. What I won't do is let anyone, your parents, the public, anyone, treat you like you owe them an organ. I nodded, even though tears blurred everything around me. There was so much noise in my life right then. My parents, the hospital machines, the buzzing of my phone. But Austin's voice cut through all of it. I'm on your side, he whispered, always. But even as his words wrapped around me, warm and steady, another shadow curled beneath them. Because in the corner of my mind, I could hear the echo of a threat I hadn't fully processed yet. A threat that was going to become very real, very soon. And it began with what happened next. A message from my mother, a demand to meet at the hospital, and a confrontation that would push everything past the point of no return. The hospital's 7th floor smelled like bleach and fear, just faint enough that you didn't notice it until it was already in your lungs. I walked down the corridor toward room 714, the soles of my sneakers sticking slightly to the polished floor with each step. Mom had texted me that morning. Come to the hospital, we need to talk, no more waiting. It wasn't a request. The door was ajar. I could hear hushed tones, my parents' voices, clipped and tense. I pushed it open. Sabrina lay in the bed, pale under the harsh fluorescent light. Even sick, even fragile, she looked effortlessly put together the way some people do, even while unconscious. Clean hair, manicured nails, as if illness itself knew better than to rumple her. Mom and Dad stood on either side of her bed like a pair of statues guarding a princess. When they saw me, both of their faces tightened. Emily, Mom breathed, stepping forward with the brittle relief of someone who'd already decided the outcome. Finally. Dad didn't smile. We need your answer, today. No hello, no how are you holding up? Just a verdict to deliver. I swallowed hard and moved to the foot of the bed. Sabrina's eyes opened, barely, and flicked toward me. Even in her weakened state, the look she gave me was familiar. A mix of pity and expectation. The look someone gives a loyal servant who's late. I took a slow breath. I've made my decision, I said. Mom clasped her hands dramatically, as if already thanking God. Dad lifted his chin, ready to nod approval at the obedience he assumed was coming. But Sabrina's eyes narrowed. Something in my voice must have sounded different, stronger. I'm not going to donate my kidney. The room froze. Dad's face went crimson so quickly it was almost frightening. What do you mean? He barked. You're not going to donate. Mom covered her mouth with a gasp. Sabrina stared at me like she'd misheard on purpose. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. I've spoken to doctors, I said. Mine. Independently. I've learned the risks. I've learned there are other viable treatments. Dialysis, the transplant registry. Dad cut me off, slamming a hand on the metal railing of Sabrina's bed. The sound echoed. Dialysis? He spat. You want your sister to suffer through that when you can fix everything with one simple surgery? One simple surgery? I repeated, incredulous. Do you hear yourself? Mom stepped forward, trembling with righteous fury. Emily, your sister is dying, and you're standing here talking about inconvenience. It's not inconvenience, I said sharply. It's major surgery. It's the rest of my life. And this, I gestured around the room, is the first time any of you have even acknowledged that. Sabrina spoke then, her voice thin but sharp. I always knew, she whispered. You hated me. It felt like someone had dropped ice water down my back. I don't hate you, I said quietly. Yes, you do, she rasped. You're letting me die to prove it. I stared at her, stunned at the audacity. To prove what? I asked softly. That I'm tired of being treated like a spare part? That I want autonomy over my body? That I refuse to set myself on fire to keep you warm? Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. Dad pointed at the door. Get out. I didn't move. I'm not finished, I said. Sabrina's gaze sharpened. You don't get to guilt me anymore, I said. Not when you... I hesitated, but the truth pushed forward. Not when you refuse dialysis. Sabrina's eyes widened. Mom stiffened. Dad's mouth fell open. You what? Sabrina whispered. I requested your medical records, I said. The doctor sent me the notes. You requested? Dad thundered. How dare you violate her privacy? How dare you? I shot back. Demand an organ from me without telling me she's been refusing the treatment plan that would keep her stable? You asked me to risk my future while hiding the full truth. Sabrina looked away, cheeks flushing. It's uncomfortable, she murmured. Dialysis makes me sick. The nausea, the fatigue, I didn't want that. I deserve a better solution. I stared at her, stunned. You deserve it, I repeated. So I should sacrifice myself because you want the comfortable option, the convenient option? Mom bristled. She's your sister. And I'm your daughter, I exploded. Or does that only matter when you need something from me? The silence that followed was so loud it rang in my ears. Then Dad spoke, his voice low and dangerous. Get out! So I did. I walked out of room 714, feeling like the air had been punched out of my lungs. My heartbeat thudded in my throat. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors finally slid open onto the lobby, I forced myself not to look back. It was done. I'd said no. For the first time in my life, no was a full sentence. I was halfway down the block when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I frowned and answered. Hello? Is this Emily Harrington? A male voice asked. Yes? This is James Porter. I'm a process server. I have legal documents for you from Robert and Patricia Harrington. I stopped walking. I'm sorry, what? I'm serving you. If you're home, I can be there in 15 minutes. He paused, then recited the words that would haunt me for months. You are being sued. I almost dropped my phone. Sued by my parents. Because I refused to hand over a piece of my body. My chest tightened. A cold tremor ran down my spine. This wasn't fear. It was betrayal. The deepest, oldest kind. The kind that cracks something in you that was already fragile to begin with. 15 minutes later, I opened my apartment door to a man holding a stack of papers. He said my name. He handed them to me. And just like that, my family officially became my plaintiffs. The stack of legal documents sat on my lap like a block of concrete. I'd read the first page 6 times. Plaintiffs, Robert Harrington. Patricia Harrington. Defendant Emily Harrington. Cause: emotional distress, reckless endangerment, malicious withdrawal of vital medical support. Malicious withdrawal. They made it sound like I'd unplugged Sabrina's life support with a smirk. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely flip to page 2. Taylor rushed over 20 minutes after I texted her. She took one look at my face, sat beside me, and read the papers silently. Her jaw clenched. This is insane. They can't do this. They literally cannot sue you for your organs. Apparently they can try, I whispered. And they did. Taylor's cousin recommended an attorney, Gregory Thompson, a man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an office that smelled like old books and expensive coffee. He read through the papers slowly, occasionally rubbing the bridge of his nose like someone trying to push back a headache. Finally, he looked up. Emily, he said gently, they have no legal standing. None. A court will never compel organ donation. If they ruled in your parents' favor, it would shatter bodily autonomy laws nationwide. So they can't win, I whispered. No, he said, they can't win. He closed the folder. But they can hurt you. They can drag you through hearings. They can make this public. They can put you under enormous stress, and they can cost you time and money. My stomach twisted. So they're using the legal system to pressure me. Yes, he said, this is coercion by litigation. The words hit like a physical blow. Coercion, by my own parents. I signed Gregory's retainer agreement with hands that weren't entirely steady. 3 days later, the headline appeared. Local woman refuses to donate kidney to dying sister. Parents sue. Front page. Full photo of me from my old Facebook profile, smiling like someone who had no idea her future was about to burst into flames. By noon, it was on regional news. By the next morning, national. People love a villain they can point at. A selfish, cold-hearted daughter, a sick sister, a lawsuit. It spread like gasoline meeting a lit match. Comments flooded my inbox. Monster. Hope karma gets you. Ungrateful brat. I would give my kidney to anybody. How could you refuse your own sister? People from high school posted vague subtweets. Some people show their true colors only when someone's dying. Always knew she was cold. Sabrina deserved better. And then Melissa, Austin's ex-girlfriend, posted a long, self-righteous thread. Not surprised at all that Emily Harrington would do this. Some girls only care about themselves. I feel so bad for her boyfriend. He deserves a partner with empathy. It went viral. My chest tightened reading it, not just because of the words, but because she used a photo of me and Austin from his Instagram, a photo he'd posted with a caption, "My girl." Melissa captioned it, "Imagine being this selfish." I put my phone down and curled into myself on the couch. Minutes later, Austin burst into my apartment, angry, breathless. "Emily," he said, rushing to me, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know she'd—" "It's fine," I croaked. "It's not fine." He knelt in front of me. "She has no right to talk about you. I already told her to delete everything. I told her to leave us alone." His warmth grounded me. His hands held my shoulders, steadying me like I was something precious, not something disposable. "I believe you," he whispered. "I believe in you." And in a world full of people shouting their judgment, that mattered more than I could explain. June 15th arrived with a gray sky and the smell of summer rain. I wore my only suit. Navy blue, slightly too big because stress had hollowed me out. When I walked into the courthouse, cameras clicked so loudly, it was like stepping into a nest of mechanical insects. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with reporters, curious strangers, and legal observers. Mom and Dad sat at the plaintiff's table. Dad stiff and seething, Mom with freshly styled hair and a pained expression that would look great on the evening news. Sabrina wasn't there, too sick for attendance, apparently, or maybe just unwilling to face me. Their lawyer, Harrison Cole, charcoal suit, slicked hair, eyes like polished steel, stood and addressed the judge. "Your Honor," he said, "my clients are devastated. Their eldest daughter is dying. Their youngest daughter promised to save her and then cruelly rescinded that promise." "Objection," Gregory said calmly. "Factually incorrect. My client never made such a promise." Cole continued undeterred. "Miss Harrington gave them hope, then heartlessly withdrew it, placing her sister in critical danger." Reporters scribbled eagerly. When Gregory stood, the room's air seemed to settle. "Your Honor," he said, "this case is not about hope. It is not about morality. It is about bodily autonomy. My client agreed to get tested, nothing more. She made no commitment, and even if she had, the law would not, and cannot, force anyone to undergo surgery." Judge Brennan, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for zero tolerance for theatrics, looked at me. "Miss Harrington," she said, "please take the stand." My pulse thundered in my ears as I walked to the witness chair. "Tell the court," she said gently, "why you decided not to proceed with the donation." So I told her about the risks, about recovery, about long-term health implications, about being a freelance designer with no paid leave, about being pressured, about being treated as a backup daughter my entire life. When I spoke about the emotional history, the neglect, the constant comparison to Sabrina, the courtroom fell completely silent. And then, Dad snapped. He jumped to his feet, pointing at me with a shaking hand. "That's a lie. We treated both daughters equally." Bang! Judge Brennan slammed her gavel. "Mr. Harrington, sit down. One more outburst and you will be held in contempt of court." He sat red-faced and trembling. Then Gregory called Dr. Stevens. The nephrologist stepped up nervously. "Doctor," Gregory began, "is Sabrina Harrington currently following the recommended treatment plan?" A long pause. Then Dr. Stevens exhaled. "No," he said. "She has refused dialysis multiple times despite strong medical advisement." A ripple of gasps swept through the room. Dad bowed his head. Mom's hands flew to her mouth. I closed my eyes. Gregory pressed gently. "And if she had accepted dialysis as recommended?" "She would likely be in more stable condition today," Dr. Stevens admitted. It was over right then. But the judge made it official. She returned after a short recess and delivered her decision. "This court finds no legal merit in the plaintiff's case. No verbal contract existed. No obligation to donate was created. This court will not and cannot compel organ donation. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. The plaintiffs will pay all of the defendant's legal fees." Mom gasped. Dad looked stunned. I felt something uncoil inside me. Not triumph, not joy. Just relief. A quiet, aching relief that tasted almost like grief. The gavel came down. Court adjourned. Reporters swarmed. Microphones. Flashbulbs. Questions like bullets. "Emily, how does it feel to win? Do you regret refusing? Are you estranged from your parents permanently?" I lifted my chin. "This was never about winning," I said. "This was about my right to protect my own body. No one should be forced or sued into organ donation. Ever." The clip went viral within hours. Support poured in. So did more hate. But something had changed. For the first time in 29 years, I hadn't done what my parents wanted. I had chosen myself. And the world had watched me do it. But choosing myself didn't mean the battle was over, because the fallout, emotional, personal, and public, was only beginning. The week after the courtroom ruling was strangely quiet. Too quiet. No phone calls, no pounding on my door, no frantic messages. Almost peaceful, except for the gnawing ache in my chest every time I remembered my father's face when the judge dismissed the case. It hadn't been shock. It had been rage, cold, primal. I blocked both of my parents' numbers that night, then blocked them again on email and Facebook, and the group chat my mother used for holiday announcements. The next morning, Taylor forwarded me a link with a neutral caption. "You should see this." The headline read, "Sabrina Harrington begins dialysis treatment. Deceased donor. Match found." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. So dialysis was an option, just like Dr. Martinez said, just like I'd told my parents. I scrolled through the article with trembling fingers. It mentioned Sabrina had finally agreed to treatment, that she was stable, that she'd been matched with a registered deceased donor and would undergo transplant surgery in a few weeks. The comment section was a war zone, half calling me selfish still, the other half saying the lawsuit was the real scandal. But I didn't care. Sabrina was going to make it, without my kidney, without sacrificing my future. Taylor asked softly over the phone, "Do you regret saying no?" I didn't hesitate. "No, not for a second." "Good," she said, "because you shouldn't." My freelance business, surprisingly, began to grow. Partly because the case had gone viral, partly because people admired me for standing my ground, partly because, according to one new client, you seem like someone who knows exactly who she is. I wasn't sure that last part was true, but I was trying. Austin supported me through the chaos. He shut down Melissa's ongoing comments without hesitation. He introduced me to his friends. His mother sent me a thinking of you text after the ruling, even though we'd never met. The first time Austin invited me to his family's Sunday dinner, I had to excuse myself and cry in the bathroom quietly. I'd simply never been in a room where every voice mattered, where moments weren't measured by comparison, where asking how you are wasn't just polite filler. It felt unreal and a little painful, like discovering someone else had been living the life you never knew you were missing. 3 weeks after the court ruling, I went to lunch at Franco's Bistro with Leonard, my design mentor. We were discussing a potential branding partnership when I saw her, my mother. She stood near the entrance, hands clasped, eyes scanning the room like she was searching for someone. When she spotted me, she froze. For a split second, I thought she might turn away. She didn't. She walked toward our table with slow, tremulous steps. "Emily," she said softly, "please, can we talk?" Leonard looked at me. I gave a small nod. He excused himself respectfully. Mom sat across from me, but she didn't look like herself. She looked older, smaller, like someone had drained the air from her. She swallowed. "Your father and we realized how wrong we were." I stayed silent. "We treated you unfairly," she continued. "Not just with the kidney, with everything. We should have supported you more, loved you better, been better parents." Her voice shook. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. For a moment, just a moment, my heart wavered. Then clarity settled in. "You're only here because the community turned against you," I said quietly. "Because people know now that Sabrina refused treatment, that you sued your own daughter over her organs." She flinched. "That's not true. We miss you. We love you. We're your parents." "No," I said, gathering my bag and standing. "Parents love all their children, not just the golden one. Parents don't treat one daughter like a prize," I said, "and the other like a backup plan." Her chin trembled. "They don't sue their child. They don't turn her body into property." Mom reached for my hand. "Emily, please." I stepped back. "You lost the right to call yourselves my parents," I said, "the day you made me your defendant." And then I left, leaving her sitting alone in the middle of the restaurant, napkin in hand, apology dripping from her lips like something scripted. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived at my door. Sender, Sabrina Harrington. I almost threw it away. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe the ghost of sisterhood, stopped me. I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter on heavy cream paper. "Emily, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it." My breath caught. "The surgery went well. I'm recovering. But that's not why I'm writing." I kept reading. "My therapist asked me to write about my earliest memory of our family. My earliest real memory is being 5 years old and hearing Mom call me a miracle and call you a surprise." My stomach twisted. I knew even then that I was the favorite. And I used it. I benefited from it. I watched them dismiss you and diminish you and ignored it because being adored felt too good. A tear slipped down my cheek. The lawsuit forced me to see how selfish I've been. Not just as an adult, my entire life. You stood up for yourself, for your body, for your right to matter. You taught me something I should have learned long ago. I don't expect us to reconcile. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed you to know that I finally see the truth about our parents, about myself, about you. You always deserved better than what we gave you. Sabrina. I stared at the letter for a long time, then folded it gently and placed it in my desk drawer. Not ready to forgive, not ready to forget, but not ready to throw it away either. Everything had changed, but the deeper transformation was still coming. Because the real story wasn't about the lawsuit. It was about what came after. The life I built, the love I found, the peace I fought for, and the final realization that set me free. 18 months after the trial, I woke up in a place I never thought I'd reach. Not a physical place, a life. A life that finally felt like mine. The morning sun filtered through the gauzy white curtains of my small house in the Oakland Hills. Wind chimes tinkled softly outside the kitchen window. There were basil plants on the windowsill and a tomato vine growing stubbornly, almost proudly, on the back patio. When I stepped into the living room, my laptop was waiting for me on the wide wooden desk I'd refinished myself. A second monitor, a mug warmer, a giant mood board pinned with designs from clients across the country. My design agency, Emergent Studio, now had 4 employees, real ones. Creative, brilliant people who cared about our mission. Helping nonprofits, community organizations, and small businesses find their voice. We had clients in Boston, Seattle, Denver. We weren't famous, but we were rooted. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't working from scarcity or fear. I was building something. I was choosing the shape of my own days. Austin padded into the kitchen barefoot, hair sticking up in 6 directions, wearing the old t-shirt he claimed was vintage, but was really just faded from too many washes. "Coffee?" he mumbled, voice gravelly. You're adorable, I said, handing him a mug. He leaned down and kissed my forehead, lingering for a second like he was grounding both of us. You working on the nonprofit pitch today? He asked. Yeah, then I have a meeting with a new client in Seattle. He grinned sleepily. Look at you, running an empire. I rolled my eyes, but warmth pooled in my chest. It wasn't like the praise I'd grown up around. Conditional, transactional, reserved only for one child. Austin didn't value me because I was exceptional. He valued me because I was me. Sometimes that difference alone made my throat tighten. I still remember the first Sunday dinner at Austin's parents' house. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes whipped smooth with cream, green beans tossed in a lemon butter glaze, and laughter, so much laughter. People interrupting each other, passing dishes back and forth, asking questions that didn't sound like interrogations. Halfway through the meal, Austin's mom touched my arm and asked, Emily, sweetheart, how was your week? Just asked, and waited. Like my answer mattered. I excused myself and cried quietly in the bathroom, pressing my hand over my mouth so they wouldn't hear. It wasn't sadness. It was grief for the things I'd never had, and gratitude for the things I finally did. They became my family, not by blood, not by demand, not by obligation, but by choice. Mutual, gentle, consistent choice. Every birthday, every major holiday, I still received cards from my parents. Thick envelopes addressed in my mother's elegant handwriting. I returned them all, unopened, unbroken. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary, a line drawn not in anger, but in self-preservation. Some wounds don't heal because they were never meant to. They teach you instead. They shape how you walk forward. People sometimes ask if I'll ever forgive my parents. The truth is, forgiveness isn't the point. This isn't a story about revenge, or victory, or teaching them a lesson. It's a story about reclaiming my own autonomy, my body, my choices, my life. It's about learning that love doesn't have to be earned through sacrifice, that family is not defined by DNA or obligation, that boundaries are not cruelty. They are survival. The real triumph was not winning the lawsuit, not the headlines, not the judge's ruling, not the public support. The real triumph was internal. It was the moment I recognized my own worth, after being told for years that I had none. It was understanding that saying no isn't betrayal. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from the people who insist you owe them pieces of yourself to remain loved. Sometimes protecting yourself means disappointing others. And sometimes the bravest, hardest, most life-altering choice you can make is choosing yourself in a world that taught you to shrink. My kidney is still mine. My life is still mine. And I've never been more at peace with the person I'm becoming. I'm curious, if you were in my position, would you have made the same decision? Or would you have donated despite everything? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. And if my story resonated with you, please share it. You never know who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself.